Mike Baker is the host of the President's Daily Brief podcast. He's also a former CIA covert operations officer. And Daniel Morisani is a former Marine intelligence officer. Gentlemen, great to have you this morning.
Thank you.
A lot to discuss based on what we're seeing that occurred overnight. So your thoughts first, Daniel, on President Trump essentially ramping up the military campaign, these strikes. We also heard from the IRGC reports that he has struck infrastructure in Bandar Abbas.
Yes. Yeah, he's hit Bandar Abbas as well as a couple other ports in Iran. And these ports serve two purposes. First of all, they are crucial to Iran's economy. Second of all, they're important for if they have to move any material or military supplies to the Gulf area to attack ships in the Strait.
And just to stay with you for a second, you had mentioned in the green room that that some of the targets that they've attacked are ones that actually would then impact China potentially, and that draws this much wider.
Yeah, very much so. So that was most true last week, especially when they hit a rail depot all the way up by the Turkmenistani border. That tremendously affected Iran's ability to bring goods in by rail from China, which is very important to its economy.
Mm-hmm. So we're looking now in terms of the top remaining targets the U.S. could potentially hit. There are not that many left, but there are quite a number here that President Trump is looking at. And major IRGC facilities like missile test sites and naval bases with the location of Iran's key nuclear test sites in mind. I mean, what should the U.S. target next?
Well, they still actually do have a lot of target packages, right? I mean, they've been hitting, they've gone through several hundred just in the past 6 or 7 nights of these strikes, which kind of speaks to the idea that we did not decimate their military, right? We have a lot left on the table that we can go after. There's some issues here in terms of what to hit next. One of the most concerning parts is the fact that the Iranian regime went after a desalination plant. Mm-hmm. Now, that's critical to this region, right? That's where the drinking water comes from for all these people.
Life.
That's life, right? Once that starts to happen, this is a completely different situation. It becomes a real goat rope, right? So I'm very concerned about that. And the idea that how do you do this without impacting civilian infrastructure that at the end of the day is going to send this region into a tailspin.
Yeah, Dan, talk to me about that a little bit, because we've struck so many sites. We've been doing this for how many weeks? Mm-hmm, we've spent how much money on missiles and rockets and everything else. What does Iran do? How do they hide these things that we haven't been able to say, oh, we take it out here and we take it out there and we're done? What are they doing with these with weapons? Where do they put them?
Well, Iran has long been the sort of the master of the dark arts of hiding military infrastructure amongst civilians. Their proxies in Hamas, as well as the Houthis in Yemen, really wrote the book on how to do this effectively. So it's not their first rodeo as far as this goes, but they are definitely going to try to do that as much as possible. And there are a lot of civilians in Iran. It's a very populous country. So we should certainly expect that they're going to co-locate a lot of infrastructure to the greatest extent possible.
So they put the weapons basically right where the civilian population is and then dare us to kill civilians.
More or less, yeah.
They're also very good at, I mean, they've had decades to think about this, right? The regime in Iran has always assumed at some point there would be a major conflagration with the U.S. And so for decades they figured out, what do we do? That's why most of their facilities are underground, deeply underground, and why their missile launchers, their stockpiles of missiles, why it seems so difficult to remove those completely. And that's not going to happen. Something that I think people need to focus on also is what's going on with the Houthis. Okay, so the Iranian regime has advised the Houthis, right, you probably are going to get in the game. And it looks like they definitely are. They've been redeploying resources. And if they mess up the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, right, which is another critical waterway, 8% of the world's energy is flowing through there now. So what happened was they effectively held the Strait of Hormuz captive. The Saudis and others started to find workarounds, right? They started to rely more on an east-west pipeline going through Yanbu. And so the Iranians said, okay, well, that's obviously not good enough to hold the Hormuz Strait captive. Let's go after something else. So they're escalating, even while we imagine that somehow, we're going to bring them to the table.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.